Hello, everyone. This is George Ogrodnik with Zentech Consultants, and today we're going to talk about mechanical assemblies in BricsCAD. We're going to talk about how BricsCAD handles components, constraints, as well as other features pertaining to working with assemblies in BricsCAD. So we have a very simple assembly here. Well, it's not really an assembly yet, it's just a collection of parts. And these parts are just 3D objects. We can still model them and modify them in any way that we see fit, but we need to convert them to components before we can start making this assembly. So unlike SolidWorks and Inventor, where components and modeling objects and parts are handled separately, and they have two separate part names, BricsCAD handles this in the same environment, in the DWG modeling environment. So to distinguish components from regular 3D objects, they're turned into blocks, similar to how 2D line objects are turned into blocks to group them together and duplicate them. So BricsCAD goes a step further with this, as it turns them into blocks and it assigns them mechanical structure. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to initialize this mechanical structure by using the bmech command. If it finds blocks in our drawing, it's going to automatically convert them into mechanical components. So it looks like there still aren't any components. That's because these are not blocks. These are still 3D objects. So we'll need to use the form component to manually convert these into components. So we'll start with the gear. And we're going to select local components so that the block that it makes exists inside of this DWG and does not get written externally. So we'll select the base point and we'll name this gear. And we'll do the same thing with the other three. So there's the pinion, then the cover, and finally the base. So now we have our 4 components configured as components. So next we can use 3D constraints to assemble them together. Now, these are the same constraints that you use in BricsCAD for parametric modeling, so that you can assign a value to these constraints and they can reshape and resize your model. Now that your parts are mechanical components, these constraints will no longer change their geometry, but they'll be able to reposition and move your parts to interact within an assembly. So let's start by grounding this this base right here. Now we'll insert the gears into their respective shaft holes. Just need to flip this one around. And same thing with the pinion. Flip it. So I'm not going to go into parametric motion constraints in this video. So for now, I'm just going to rotate these so that the teeth look like they're supposed to be meshing and they're not clipping through one another. So that looks about right. So finally, we're gonna constrain the cover to the box. So this is going to take 3 constraints instead of 1 because this is a rectangle and we need to remove all 6 degrees of freedom. And the cover is on the box. So last but not least, we need to insert screws into these holes. So we could go ahead and use the standard part library to find fitting screws, but we're not going to do that because I already have these modeled as an external DWG. So we'll insert those components. So I'm going to insert this screw, and you can see that it gets inserted as an external component, as you can see by this green arrow next to the component. So let's constrain this screw. And now I can just copy this part into the remaining holes using the regular copy command. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. And you can see this just added 3 more instances of the screw component. So these aren't actually constrained, but for the sake of demonstration, they're in the correct space. So this pretty much concludes what I wanted to talk about with BricsCAD assemblies. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you'll check out our website at zentechconsultants.net to see what training and services that we offer for BricsCAD and BricsCAD Mechanical. Thanks for watching.